and welcome back to Scale Me Down. Please like and subscribe to support the channel. And welcome to another episode of this Pilatus turbo porter with variable pitch propeller. In the last episode we'd had some success with our variable pitch mechanism, and we'd also repaired the damage to the fuselage after first removing all the covering. Now whilst the covering's off and we have access inside the fuselage, we're going to now reinstall some of the items that we took out and do all the wiring. Let's get started. Now it doesn't make for the best video as it tends to be very small and fiddly, but rest assured there was lots of soldering, bearing wires, tinning them, soldering together and heat shrinking. I then fished the wires through the frames in the fuselage. So with the covering removed, we had access to neatly fit the wiring from the tail servos through the fuselage under the battery bay along with the BEC to emerge underneath the pilot seat towards the receiver, which is up here. Now whilst we have access to the inside of the aircraft, now will be a good time to fit the tow release. So this is the Hobby King tow release mechanism, and it works like this. This servo just draws down this pin and releases a cable which has a loop tied in the end. And this will be fastened in this upper cabin section here, but this bit of light ply here, which isn't glued to much, isn't strong enough to support the loads generated by the tow line. So we need to connect both this frame, this roof part and this frame, and perhaps the one behind, with some structure. To design this structure I use Inkscape, and I make use of simple shapes and tools such as the Align and Distribute and Path, Add and Subtract to create an interlocking structure. Before cutting them out in birch plywood on our laser cutter. So this assembly is what I've come up with to spread the loads from towing gliders over a large part of the fuselage structure. And I've dry fitted it without glue into the fuselage, so I know everything fits. The problem we now have to assemble this with 24-hour epoxy is that it's bigger than the hole it fits through. So we have to fit this together in situ. Here goes. This was a bit fiddly, but it could have been worse. Teamwork is the key, and actually the job went much easier than I thought it would. Whilst all that sets, let's revisit the bits we glued in the last episode. As part of the repairs, I put in these two vertical box sides in a good quality birch plywood, and also this beech landing gear block, and that's really good and strong, and it's all glued together with 24-hour epoxy. This arrangement allows the speed controller to fit here in the tunnel, and will leave some hatches with a big hole in so that the speed controller heatsink is directly in the breeze. I cut and fit these 5mm by 5mm Abichi sticks to form a rebate to fit the various hatches to. These hatches will provide access to the equipment and wiring after the fuselage is recovered. And the final bit of equipment to install is this wiring harness that I've made up that supplies the wing roots. And this supplies the flaps, ailerons and lights in the wings. And I use these 9-pin connections for that. When I solder them up, which again doesn't show well on film, I use the mating half to keep the pins aligned in case the plastic insert gets a bit warm. So we'll pop these in the positions they're going to live, and then I'll show you the modifications that we've made to the motor and propeller pitch change mechanism to finish up. Since the last episode, we've made some modifications to our motor and pitch change assembly. And in an earlier episode, Lotus 7 suggested that the inner rod looked a bit weak and flimsy, and that might be contributing to some of the forces on the propeller. So once again, my friend Mark to the rescue. He stepped in, and we've now gone from 1/8 silver steel to 4mm silver steel. However, that meant that taking the motor apart, putting the shaft on his lathe and boring the centre of this out ever so slightly, the motor shaft, and also our brass carry through and also the centre hub. And while we're at it, he machined on his mill some flats on the motor shaft to stop the propeller assembly from slipping. So we're now ready to reassemble all this back on the front of the aeroplane again.